Hello and welcome to the Extended Greg YouTube channel. I'm Greg, and on today's show we're going to be actually building a development environment on the Raspberry Pi 5. We're going to be using this to be able to make more efficiently approach our development projects, as well as implying an overlay file system to that way be able to restart it and get back a brand new system that we can test install scripts as well as other procedures on without having to worry about pretty much artifacts from previous installations. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be using the Raspberry Pi OS in order to actually do this, as well as using it to create our boot image that we will turn into or convert into our read-only file system. So let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so first thing that we're going to do is just right here really quick. I'm just going to show a couple things. Something I found, and this is really going to be important, is I actually want to try installing this. I haven't tried it yet, so we're going to see how it goes, but it should actually install GitHub Desktop, which will allow me to commit to repositories. And that's one of the requirements that I want to approach here today. So I want to do first our user setup, go through and actually configure our user. We're going to set our home directory to be a USB thumb drive, and then we're going to install some programs that will then remain read-only on the file system, one of them being this GitHub installation. And it should actually take it from the latest version of GitHub. There is some code down here that actually looks a little bit more streamlined, so we'll just open this up over there. But pretty much you can configure this to do whatever you want. And what an overlay file system is it pretty much will copy any changes to RAM opposed to writing it to the disk. And what that allows you to do is to be able to make whatever changes that you want, and at the end of it, reboot the operating system and everything will be back to the last time that you saved it. So it's kind of like freezing it in place, so that way you're not actually having to worry about making a mistake and crashing your system. So from a development perspective, it makes it a lot easier. That way you're not having to worry about what changes you make. And because of the way that it integrates with Raspbian OS, which I'll switch to now, so it will actually go through and be able to be turned on and off using the raspi-config utility. So because of that, that's going to make things a lot easier. And I did find this here. I'm not sure that this is going to work. This is the source code. But pretty much we're at the main desktop of Raspberry Pi OS. Okay, and what I have installed right now, I do have a USB thumb drive where I want to store my home directory, and then I also have another USB adapter in there that has an SD card that we're going to program with our new operating system. This particular OS that I currently have installed is on a cheap SD card, but I want to put it on a better SD card, and also I want to make sure that it's untouched. I've been doing a lot of modifications to this particular one, so I don't necessarily want to do that. And at the end of the day, it's a lot easier to make a new one than it is to try and go back and format this one, and then I have nothing to go back to. So, this way I could switch it in, switch it out. It makes it a lot easier. So the way that we're actually going to do this is we're going to go in to Accessories, and we're going to go to Imager. And what this is going to do is it's just going to open up the Raspberry Pi official imager. You could do this from Windows as well. Obviously if you don't have an OS already installed on your Raspberry Pi, it makes it difficult to do it on the Raspberry Pi. But I thought it would be a lot of fun to try this out on Raspberry Pi itself, just to see how it goes. So we're going to be using the Raspberry Pi 5 just because I think it does have enough performance to be able to support this. I've tried this before with Raspberry Pi 4, Raspberry Pi 3, etc. With the previous generations, it just really wasn't fast enough to be able to be a good test environment for this kind of, to be able to do programming on and then be able to run it on and feel confident with it. So I've only used it for the last step. But it is something where this has been offered for quite a while through, I believe, back as far as even Raspbian days, before it became Raspberry Pi OS, where they allowed you to turn on the overlay file system. So let's choose our operating system. We're going to choose the 64-bit version, which is the recommended version for the Raspberry Pi 5. And then for storage, we're going to choose this 32 gigabyte drive that I have that is the SD card. We're going to hit next, and it's going to say, would you like to apply customization settings? We're going to edit the settings. So first we're going to set our host name. So in this case, we're going to call this Linux Dev arbitrarily. It doesn't really matter what it's called. You name it whatever you want. We're going to set a username, and we're going to set a very secure password. Not really. It's not secure, but I'll change it at a later time. Then you could configure your wireless LAN here if you did need to use it, or since in this case I'm going to be connecting through wired, I don't actually need to set that, so I'm going to leave that blank. And I'm going to choose our locale settings, which in this case is America, New York, so it's the Eastern time zone, and it's going to be the US keyboard layout. I'm going to save that all out. I'm going to say, would you like to apply customization settings? Now we see yes is currently available, because we can do yes, no, or no clear settings, which would undo what we just did. So we want to choose yes. All existing data on the device that we chose will be removed. So we do want that to in fact occur, because we want a clean OS image install. So we're going to hit yes. Now it's going to ask for our confirmation for the password for the OS that we're currently using. So we do that, and now it's going to download the needed image, and it's going to write it to the actual SD card. So we're going to see that do that here. It's not going to be particularly fast. I think I have it plugged in through USB 2 right now. But that'll give us a few minutes here just to kind of go through exactly what we're trying to do. So we want to make sure that we're going to be able to pre-install everything that we need. We want to save all of our files, so that way as we're doing work, writing things out, that's not getting stored on anything that's related to the read-only file system. So just like Alpine Linux, as we've done in other tutorials, this kind of makes it behave similarly. And especially for GUI-based applications on Raspberry Pi, it actually is a very clean way to be able to do similar functions without having to do the manual installation of Alpine Linux. So the core OS, at least as far as the parts that aren't changing, will actually run off of the SD card, and any changes we'll do a copy on write, if that means anything. So copy on write, what that does is anytime you make a change, it copies the file that you're currently editing and saves it somewhere else, and then effectively dereferences the original file. So it still looks like a single file within the operating system, but it is technically a separate file from what you originally started with. So with the overlay file system, think of it kind of like sitting on top, right? So it's sitting above your current operating system image. So anytime you do changes, things like that, it will store it in RAM. That way when the machine is powered off or anything else like that, all of those changes will be lost. So something to keep in mind, some of the caveats associated with this, is it will not update automatically. And especially with Raspberry Pi OS, things like that, you're going to have updates all the time. So you will need to unfreeze it and, turn off the overlay file system and boot normally in order to be able to apply those updates. Otherwise, those would just go into RAM and be lost as well. So it is something where there's a bit more work involved, but at the end of the day, it's, the benefits can definitely save you a lot of time in terms of not having to try and roll back, for example, install scripts, things of that nature during your development process that may be difficult to be able to remove and normalize to be able to get a good test of exactly what's going on. So we're getting to about 20% now, and pretty much we're going to be going through after this, and I'm going to install GitHub is going to be pretty much the core program that we're going to install for today, just for brevity, but it is something where you can really install any program that you can find, or even any of your own programs that you might need. So you can do any configuration that you normally would on the Raspberry Pi OS. So if you map network drives, for example, they won't be affected by the overlay file system. So you can map those while you have it disabled, and then go back in and use it normally when it is in the read-only state when the overlay file system is enabled. So it just makes life a lot easier. So in this case, we're going to be doing a similar thing just with an external drive, and that's going to be the USB thumb drive. And we're just going to use the command line to actually change the home directory location. That way, all of the needed files for the user are going to show up in that particular folder. And I think that's just going to be more than sufficient. So if we're building, for example, compiling FFmpeg from source, like we did in the last live stream, we could go ahead and do that, but we could try it in two ways. We could try it with the development packages installed, but then we can also try it again and see what packages we need to install if we weren't compiling it on the machine that we were running it on. So that's one of the key advantages, is we can have all of those dependencies uninstalled by default. Now, granted, if we're going to be doing it all the time, maybe we want this to be our development OS, so we would want to have those installed so we wouldn't have to install those all the time. But it is definitely something where it's completely customizable. So this is more of a overview guide to show you the steps that you can go through to be able to do it yourself. And I'm kind of regretting actually putting it on USB 2.0. I should have put it on USB 3.0. It probably would have been done by now. But you know what? We make do. So while we're doing that, let's actually go through. Let's open up a terminal here and just take a look at some of our options. So like something we'll definitely want is Vim. Right, so sudo apt add and then Vim. And we'll definitely need to zoom this in. Right, so Vim is going to be one of them. We'll also need, I don't believe they have it, but let's just take a look. Let's actually do apt search GitHub desktop and just see if it's a part of the baseline repository. And I don't believe it is. So it comes up with nothing, which of course is an issue. Now, on the other side of that, if we don't put -desktop, watch how many options actually show up. It's so many options that if we scroll all the way up to the top now, it's actually gone through. And that's because a lot of these packages, things like that, have dependencies or other things that have GitHub in the name that has nothing to do with an affiliation with the GitHub desktop. So, it makes it a little bit difficult in that regard, which is why we're going to be looking at that install script. But, that's just comes with the territory. It's specifically designed for that. And for those of you, I actually make the assumption that you know what GitHub is, but GitHub hosts source code and does versioning. So if we open up like a web browser, for example, and we go to github.com, pretty much it's a login-based, web-based cloud service that lets you host the source code for various projects. So like if we go to extended Greg, I have a number of repositories available with the source code, install scripts, things like that, for some of the projects that we've gone over in our videos and in our live streams. So we can actually go in and see what those repositories are, and we can click into them. So like, for example, NTP clock. We can see our install instructions, but we can actually go back through and look at the change history. So as changes are made, it's actually done in a way that is incremental and non-destructive. So if there's a particular version or a particular way that you like it done, you can actually go back to that state without the whole project having to be there, or without you having to save it locally. So it makes it a lot easier for doing development, because you can have multiple people doing their own development as well, and actually merge all of those changes together. So a lot of major projects use a form of Git, and GitHub is one of the major providers to be able to do that, because of that ability to be able to collaborate and keep those change histories and everything, so you can see the way things were if it suddenly stops working. So that's pretty much why we're going to use that, and I'm going to use this as my main commit, my main machine to be able to do commits, to make sure that line endings are correct for Linux and otherwise. But it's certainly something where, you could use whatever tools are useful to you, even if it's just a folder with files in it. There's nothing wrong with that. So I'm going to fast forward this, if I haven't cut out all of this already, when this goes into being a VOD on the back end. But just to speed things up. But this is annoyingly slow. And it's only because all of my USB ports are already taken up with things, but live and learn. So I'll actually just go in here really quick. Let's just look at raspi-config. And we'll do sudo raspi-config. And when we go in here, we see that there's a number of options available. Right, so we see we can set everything pretty much. Set our default browser if we wanted to. Display options. Interface, performance options. And here we see our overlay file system. And pretty much that's what we're going to be enabling and disabling as we need it. So once again, I'll actually back out completely. It's going to be sudo raspi-config, performance options, overlay file system. And when we click in here, do you want it enabled? Yes or no? In this case, we're going to leave it as no, because we're actually writing our SD card still. And then when it finishes, we're going to choose, normally we would just choose to reboot if we were ready to apply those changes. But in this particular case, we didn't make any changes. So we're 88% of the way there. Another application that this can be very useful for is if you're actually going to be building a kiosk environment. So if you're going to have a program that launches automatically that general users are going to use, you would definitely want to make sure that you're protecting the file system somehow from people going in and making unauthorized changes, and then schedule it so it reboots automatically on a regular interval, like every night. So you could use this to be able to make sure that it discards everything, since they won't have write access to the actual drive itself. And then be able to go and deploy your kiosk into public environments. Now, there's other considerations in play in terms of, locking things down and making sure that they can't mess other things up too bad, as well as protecting things that are not part of that overlay file system. But it is certainly something where, you can tune it to your liking. So if it's a web interface, for example, and just a web kiosk, those are pretty straightforward. You could just run it. You don't even necessarily have to run it inside of the GUI or auto login. You could just have it run it. But, it's certainly helpful to make sure that everything is going to stay in a working state. And also prevent wear, or at least reduce the amount of wear on the SD card from write cycles. So that's another reason to kind of do this is because SD cards inherently have a limited number of write cycles versus hard drives and things like that, which may have thousands of times more. So it's just something, based on how you're going to use it, if you don't require preserving those changes past reboots, it's not an issue. And especially for doing development work, like I'm planning on using it for, that's not an issue. So I'll just go in, add the particular programs and applications that I want, and then be able to turn it on so I can just test at will and not have to worry about anything. So let's let it verify the current image that it wrote to the disk. And once that's done, we should be able to pop it in, reboot, and we'll be all set to go. This is very exciting. It's like watching paint dry. So but I do like the fact that they do include the Raspberry Pi imager on Raspberry Pi OS by default. I think it definitely makes it a lot easier to deploy other variations of the Raspberry Pi hardware very quickly and easily once you have one up and running. The only downside, of course, is it needs an SD card slot in order to be able to use it if you don't have a Raspberry Pi 5 or a Raspberry Pi 4 that's capable of booting off of USB. So, that would obviously potentially go a little bit faster. They don't necessarily, it doesn't gain you anything in terms of necessarily performance or anything else like that, but it is certainly something where you can choose what you want to use. The micro SD cards tend to be a little bit too small to be able to keep track of them effectively. So sometimes it's actually a lot easier, especially if you're going to be switching them out all the time, to use the USB thumb drives, since you could write on it exactly what it is and what it's for, and switch those out as you need. So again, while that's going, pretty much we're going to be using usermod to actually go through and make the changes to the home directory location for our particular user. And the user is just like we set, and happens to be the same one that I set here. But it's just going to be defining what that particular thing is. And we'll go through and take a quick look here. So we can add groups, things of that nature. Here with the -d command is what we're going to be using to set the home directory. It will not necessarily move any of the files from the /home directory on the root of the file system, but it will make it so that way we can move everything cleanly and it will reference that in its new location mounted on the USB thumb drive. We could, as another option, also set a symbolic link, which will actually redirect any traffic going to that home directory into that new file, and use a program, for example, like rsync to copy any existing files over there. In this particular case, it's going to be an empty directory because it's going to be the first time that we log in using that OS. So we don't have to worry about that as well. But we could also do the -m. So since it will be technically an existing home directory, we could actually move the contents of our existing home directory into that new location that we specified with -d. And that's actually going to do an rsync as well on the back end, but it will do it all for us. So again, we're probably going to do that just because it's best practice to do it. We don't know if there's any hidden files or anything else like that that we may not be able to see without looking a lot deeper. So we just want to make sure that we're capturing everything so we don't break what we're actually trying to do. And the write was successful. So let's go ahead and hit continue. And we can actually shut down. And let's swap out this SD card. Assuming I can see it, let's see. There we go. Okay, so now it's the SD card is inserted. We're booting it up. We should see some video coming back here in a second as it actually gets to the point. There we go. So it's going to do its first boot cycle, and then it will take us into the operating system and we'll be able to get started. Yeah, and the first time it boots, it does take a little bit longer just because it actually will reboot a couple of times. And one of the things that it's actually doing was something you had to do manually on previous versions of Raspbian and Raspberry Pi OS, which was expand the file system on the SD card. So it's going to maximize the actual available size to the root directory, opposed to just being the 1.1 gigabytes or whatever it turned out to be that was included as part of the image. So we see it's rebooting again. Every time it does that, it's going to hang on the last frame, so we don't necessarily get an accurate reflection of that, but I do hear it over here. The fan keeps spinning up and down, and the lights keep turning on and off. But once it finishes this, and oftentimes I will say this, a lot of people get very impatient when they're booting into Raspberry Pi OS, especially headless for the first time, and they don't actually let it run through all of those cycles, and they think that it's not working. But generally it is working, so nothing to worry about. So now we're fully logged in, we're connected to the network, we saw the IP address be displayed, and here we see our USB drive that we're going to use for the home directory. And first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to actually create a directory that we want to put all of our home directories into. Because obviously, if I create more users in the future, I'll want to put them somewhere. So I'm actually not going to do /home, I'm just going to do home. Inside of that, I'm going to create another directory, and I'm going to make it the username. Okay, so now we have our full path. And it's always going to auto mount here just because of the way that Raspberry Pi OS actually works. Is it will mount it with the drive name itself, which in this case is Samsung USB. Now, something I do want to point out is if we actually go into look at our particular file system format for this drive, it's going to be the exFAT, which is the extended FAT32. So it's able to store files over 4 gigabytes in size, and it's able to use the full drive amount, which I believe is 128 gigs, which should be more than enough for anything that I need. If it was a FAT32 formatted drive, we would actually potentially have a problem, because any files over 4 gigabytes would fail to write. And since there's no other storage medium that we would be capable of preserving past reboots, we would want to make sure to change that file system. But for us, exFAT is just fine for what we're going to do. So let's maximize this, and now that we have our directory path copied, or hopefully have it copied, we're going to find out in a second. We will zoom in here, and let's do usermod. We will have to do sudo for this, so sudo usermod. -d. We're going to specify our location by pasting it here. Then space -m. And this should move our files over from our current home directory and set our new directory to the SD card, or to the USB storage device. It has a space, which is why it's complaining. So let's just put that in quotes. And it gave an error. What does it say? Oh, I didn't put... So I have to put the actual username right here at the end of it. So that's what it's actually referencing right here. Usermod options and then login. Oversight. So it's saying that it's currently in use. And I believe it is this being open right here. So let's try this. Let's see. Otherwise, we might need to log in as a different user. So let's try this really quick. I'm going to do sudo su, right, which takes us into the root login. I'm going to do passwd to set a password for root, because by default it doesn't actually have a password defined. I put too many S's. I'm going to put a very secure password, which I will change later. And now let's try, potentially we could log into here as well. So let's exit out of su. And let's see if we can log out. And log in as that. So it should take us back to the login screen. We're going to do other, and we'll log in as root, put in our very secure password, hit login. Now, and it may not be capable of doing that. Let's see. If that's the case, we may actually need to use SSH or PuTTY from another machine in order to be able to do that. Let's try it again. It doesn't happen. Is it going to give me autocomplete? I don't think it will. Oh no, it froze. Oh. What's it called? Let's see. And just for reference, this is the home directory right now. So it says it has all of this, but this is what the -m command will actually move over when it works. So Samsung USB. Otherwise, we may need to force it. And I will need to check the flag on how to do that, but close quotes, -m. And it says it's currently in use. Let's just do a quick usermod -help. Yeah, it's not going to give us the force command in this variant, which is fine. So let's take a look really quick at the root. We weren't able to log in because likely it was also locked. So we can do sudo user mod, and this is of course before trying putty, but we'll do -u, capital U, root. All right, so now it should be unlocked. Just make sure, I don't believe there's any other options that we would actually need to do for now. So let's try logging out, and let's try logging back in as root again. Now, it's hard-coded not to allow it. Either that, or it's actually restricted using another mechanism that I'm not familiar with, which is also possible. So I'd have to look that up. So let's go ahead and actually log out of this. We'll go into our other machine. I do know it's 15146 is the IP address of our machine. So let's switch over to that. Right, so here we see our computer. The mouse is somewhere. There's the mouse. So we'll do 192.168.15.146. We need to install SSH. Switching back over here. And this actually is one of the reasons why I do like Alpine Linux, is it does have that, which makes it a lot easier for headless installations as well. So let's do raspi-config. See if we have an option in there to where we can just actually turn it on. Let's make this full screen. And so interface options, SSH. Would you like it to be enabled? We do. So we're going to type it. Okay. Everybody's happy. Perfect. Now we're going to do finish. We will exit and we will log out. And we'll switch back over to the other machine. See if we can log in. So we already have the IP address entered. We will restart it. We do see that it is able to connect. So we're going to log in as extended Greg, because currently we haven't modified the configuration to allow root login. We're going to type in our super secure password, and we are in. So first thing let's do is let's actually find our path. Just so we have it, we can copy it to the clipboard, and then we can actually go from there. So we'll do media, and this will have auto-completion, extended Greg, Samsung USB, home, extended Greg. Perfect. So that's actually our path, and because it has the escape characters, we don't have to put it in quotes. We'll Control-C out of that, and we'll do sudo user mod -d, paste that in. I just right-click, and then we'll do -m extended Greg. All right. Spelling it correctly. It says it's currently in use still, and it may be because we still have the user here. And here's actually an interesting thing. So we'll do kill 1028, and I'm pretty sure it's going to log us out. So then it will be our putty session that does it. Let's find out. It did not. Oh, it respawned. Oh, that's fun. So we're going to be creating another user, and then we'll delete that user after we actually do it. Actually, let's just edit the SSH file. So we'll do /etc/sshd, sshd.conf. We're going to scroll down here where it says permit root login. We're going to hit delete, and we're just going to make this yes. We're going to change this back after the fact. Let's actually install Vim. Then we'll do that. Otherwise, it's going to annoy me to have to look it up. Now we see pretty colors that we can't read. All right, so it is right here. So we're going to go insert. We're going to go to the end. We're going to type yes. All right, so now we can actually log in. So we're going to do /etc/ or excuse me, let's do service sshd restart. Okay, now it should be restarted. So now if we open up another putty session, or actually we could just duplicate the existing one because I didn't put a username. And we'll log in as root. We'll put in the very secure password, and we are in. So now we can exit out of the original one right here. And now we should be able to do it. So let's do usermod -d. And this should autocomplete. I say that, but let's see. So we'll do media. No, it won't do it. So once again, let's do ls and get the location. Right, so that's our location that we want. We're going to copy it out. Control-C out of that. We're going to do usermod -d, paste that in, -m, then we're going to do extended greg, it says it's still in use. I'm not entirely sure what it's in use for, but let's just get rid of the -m. We're going to copy it manually. No, it's not a thing. So we're looking right now, we're seeing who the user owners are right here. And we see 1303 is bash. On TTY1. Now, it should have exited when we did kill 1303. But let's do it as sudo-u extended greg. See if we come up with it still. Now, if we really want to mess it up, pretty much what we'll do is we'll do kill all bash. I don't know that this is actually running, because it didn't end any processes there. So we're gonna do kill -9 1303. And what that should do oh, I think it logged in again. It looks like it's logged in. No, it is not. Okay. There's a lot of processes that are using it now that weren't a second ago. So we see this here with the extended plus. That's pretty much the extended Greg username right here. So this first column is the username. And we see here systemd --user, etc. So I don't know that I see 1303 running anymore, which was the one that was saying that was blocking it. So let's try it again. And I do want the -m command if we can use it. 7435. So let's try it. So let's do this. Let's do ps-aux or extended, greep extended plus. So that did work. So doing it and ending it was able to do it before it respawned. Because there after that we do see that it did in fact respawn quite a few things. But it's going to say 7614 is the next time. So let's clear this out. Just so we're not having to look at all of that. Now, what it actually said was it didn't want us to create that directory in that, so we're going to do rmdir /media extended greg Samsung home. All right, and then the last one there should be just the home directory. So we're going to use that one instead. So if we go back up, we're going to do the same thing. I'm not sure what actually it said it wanted to do for that, so let's see. We're going to find out what number it wants. So 7595. So we're going to go back up here, and we'll set this. We will remove that so it's just the home folder. We'll set this to 75195. And we're just going to keep chasing this forever. All right. So we'll keep this the same. It won't find that. Oops. And what -9 does is it pretty much exits it without giving it the ability to be able to say it exited cleanly. So it's just a force exit, like a force quit in Windows or on Mac. Other OSs make this much easier. I'm telling you that right now. Because we're not logged in as this user, there's no reason for this user to have anything running. So let's actually look at that. Let's see if there's a way that we could just force it to log out. So we can do pkill. That's an option, and that might be the better option for what we're trying to do here. And then it ran. Okay, that was better. So short form is we can go out into the shadow file and actually see what it's currently set to. Or the user's file. So let's do cat /etc/users. Or maybe it is actually under shadow. Or greep extended Greg. Now. So that actually would give us group numbers, things like that. But point being is we're done. So let's exit out of this. Let's go back in and log in on the other, on the actual machine itself. All right, so now we can do our super secure password. We can log into this. All right, and here we see the home folder icon, and we see all of our files have now moved over here. So if we actually look in our home directory, right, our home folder, if we were to create a new folder, call this test, and then open it, put a file and call that test2. All right, we see that file in there. When we look at our SD drive, right, so we're looking at our SD drive right now. Test, we see test2 is still there. So we see that all of the home directory files, including our desktop, is now actively storing information on the USB thumb drive. Right, and we can delete it. And we'll just clean up really quick. So it's saying that it can't move it to the wastebasket, which is this right here, which is like the recycling bin or the trash can on Windows or Mac. But it's saying, do you want to delete them instead? And the answer is yes. That's what we're trying to do. So some limitations. That does have a lot to do with the way the OS is actually implemented. But realistically speaking, it's going to be able to preserve our files past reboots, which is the ultimate goal. So now that we've done that, let's actually go through and see if we can get the actual GitHub desktop installed. So I'm going to launch the web browser once. Oh, wait, this takes a minute. We haven't run it yet on this particular OS. We had it on the previous installation, but not this installation. So I say that, but there's no actual way to know, and it doesn't tell you that it's trying to open it. I don't know why the image does this, but that is something related to Raspberry Pi OS and not the actual performance of the Pi itself. So I've clicked it 3 times at this point, and I'm not sure that it's actually going to, to successfully open. Let's see. And in fact, we can go to Task Manager. Let's see what this is currently doing. Because we see there's not a lot going on here. And we see there's a lot in terms of the processes that are currently running under our username. But I do not see that it is trying to start. So let's go to Internet and let's choose Chromium web browser instead. Let's see what that does. We'll sort by command name because it really should be showing up at the top. It does sound like the fan is pulsing a little bit, but I'm not sure. Because I don't see a process running here, and that may indicate that it's not doing things. So since we just changed all of the user, everything else like that, even though we do have good confidence that it worked because we just tested it, let's restart the system and just make sure everything's good since we were killing a lot of processes related to other things. So we still haven't set our overlay file system just yet. We want to get it configured the way we want it. So right now we do have it to where it's preserving it through reboots. So that way when it's doing the read-only file system, it's not going to delete the files that we're currently working on. So we have somewhere to store all of our information and settings relating to our individual user. So once it does come back, we'll install that. Right, so I'm going to log in, hopefully. It's not logging in. So why is it not logging in? And my guess is it's not actually mounting the USB thumb drive. So it's not able to load from it. So let's resolve that. And that's probably going to be adding it to the fstab file to make sure it starts and mounts it at an earlier point in the particular boot process. So that way it's ready when it tries to auto log in. So we'll log back in. Make this full screen. We're going to log in as root again, just because we're going to have to do a bunch of sudos otherwise. Okay, and let's do df-h, which will tell us what it currently has mounted, and we do see it is not currently mounted. So we can, let's actually just, if we do ls/dev/sd star, we see we have SDA and SDA1. That's going to be our media card. So what we can do is we can actually mount it to a particular directory that we want. So if we do, for example, ls/media, and look in there, we see extended Greg already exists, right? But that's all it has in there. It doesn't have the name of the actual drive. So if we want to mount it to where we set our user directory to, we'll have to create it. So we'll do make dir /media /extended Greg, and then we'll do Samsung / to escape the space character USB. And now we can do mount, and we're going to do /dev /SDA1, which is the partition. SDA is the physical drive. Then we're going to do /media /extended Greg Samsung USB. All right, and it mounts successfully, so we don't need any special options. So now if we do df-h, we do see it mounted successfully there. So if we switch back to the main machine, we should be able to log in successfully, which will confirm our expectation for what we think the issue is. And we were able to log in successfully. So since we have the putty session open on the other machine, let's add it to our fstab file. So we're going to do vi /etc/fstab. And here we see all of our partitions, everything else like that. Now, it's doing it by partition ID, and we could do the same, but we don't actually necessarily need to do that. So what we could do, we'll hit I for insert, and we're going to do /dev/sta1, tab over, /media/extended greg, /Samsung \space USB. All right, and we're going to do vfat. I'm going to do a tab and then do vfat, tab, defaults, 0 And we're going to try that. Now, if it doesn't boot, it's going to be an issue. So what we're going to do is we're going to test it before we reboot and make sure that it works. Okay? Otherwise, it will halt your boot process. So we're going to do umount /media/extended greg. Okay? It says target is busy, so something is currently using it, namely when we logged into it. So we'll switch back over. Let's log out really quick. And let's try unmounting it again. Okay, we'll switch back over here. And let's see if nothing's using it at this point. It's going to be very difficult about it. So we do see that there's actually processes running on here that are currently doing things. So we're not able to do it, but let's just, for the fun of it, let's do mount-a. And it says parse error on line 4. So it doesn't like something about line 4, and I'm willing to bet money that is what we set as our current entry. So line 4 is set here. So it doesn't like something about it. Maybe that it is our current mount path. Not sure if we could put it in quotes, but let's just try it. It is getting the red, so I don't know that it likes it. I mean, technically speaking, there's no reason why the backslash should be an issue, but who knows? Let's just do a quick search just for a reference purpose. So we're going to do fstab mount the folder with space in name, in path. All right, we see super user here. It also demonstrates the backslash. So it is also possible that we have the file system defined wrong. Oh, and actually it does say quote marks. Let's try it. Even though it's showing up as an error, that just may be based on what Vim believes to be an error. I didn't remove the backslash. Let's Try it again. Oh, we may actually need to use the partition ID. Right? Because we're following this here, so /dev/SDA, and the number, it's doing spaces in between everything, but realistically that doesn't usually matter. And then it's doing the file system type, defaults 00. So we could also do Linux find drive file system type. So we could try find MNT. I don't know if that's a default package, but we could always try and find it. Let's just see. So it says it is exFAT, not vFAT. So that's where we went wrong. So let's change this to exFAT. And now let's try and run it. Still doesn't like it. Let's check our spacing. And we'll just follow the other example and just put one space in between. Boom, 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 boom. Then we'll do, actually, tab, tab, try that. Single space, try that. Whoops. Still not very happy. So something is not particularly happy with it. Let's see if there's another way that we can approach this. So this is saying just to do the block ID. So it's library, so lib block ID 1 is what it's saying to do it to get the current block ID. So let's try it. Do we have that? We do. So this is the current UUID right here. Right, it says type is exFAT for our current SDA1. So let's go back in. I think it's selected instead of inserting. Let's try that once more. Make sure that actually copies. So we want this. We're going to go back into here. It's weird mouse behavior. Oh. Otherwise, I'm going to write this down, which is what I'm going to do anyway. So it's going to be 64A5-F0009. So that's what we want to actually put in there. All right. So we're going to do the same thing, part UUID equals 64A5-F0009. Then we have this here. We have exFAT defined. Defaults 0, 0. We can put tabs here too, because that's what already exists. Let's try it and see. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the part UUID, that is the actual UUID. Let me correct that first. And now let's try it again. Still not happy. Just for fun, let's try mounting it to a different location. And just make sure it's not the space. So let's do make dir /media /test. And let's just try mounting it there. Okay. Now, in that particular case, it worked, but it didn't have a trailing slash, which I think may have been my mistake when I copied it. So we'll do extended Greg / Samsung USB with no ending, no trailing slash, as they call it. And it's still unhappy. It really doesn't like that slash. So let's do this. So pretty much new game plan. I'm just going to mount it to a different location. I'm going to change the directory again for the user. And I'm going to see. Oh. I just noticed somebody commented on this. So, Gatry, or Gatray. So, an overlay file system is pretty much a way to make any changes that you make to the file system go into RAM, and the actual root of the file system be read-only. So, it sits on top of your existing file system that you already have partitioned on the card, and it will preserve your current state, so any changes get discarded after a reboot. So, hopefully that answers your question. Not sure if you're still watching, but I know this is kind of tedious, but we're just going to work through it all. So, let's go ahead and continue on. We're just going to change the path. It seems to be fighting me every step of the way, but, you know, that's how it goes. We're just trying this out. So, I'm actually building this to be able to use it for myself later. So we're gonna keep trying. So let's go ahead and create a separate location for this. So we're gonna do make dir, and I'm gonna put it in the mount directory. So I'm gonna do /mount / home. I think that'll be easy enough. Actually, we'll do home dirs. And let's go back into VI. All right, we still are happy with that. We're going to go back here. And we're going to do mount /home ders. And let's try it again, mount -a. And let's do system control. Daemon reload. Still can't find it, but let's just do BLKID again. 64A5F. Oh, I put too many zeros. Typing correctly is key. Whoops. There we go. So if we look now, we do see that it is mounted correctly in the mount home ders without the error. It is located where we want it to be, but now we have to change our root login again. So we're going to do pkill extended greg and usermod -d / and we don't have to move it this time, but we're going to do /mount /xders, home ders /home / extended greg / and then we do user extended greg. Okay, and now that should have worked. So let's try rebooting again, and let's see what we get. So I'm going to hit this and then go over to the other machine. So looking at the other machine as it boots up, I do hear the fan roaring away. If we get to the UI, there we go. Okay. So it should be in the state that we want. Let's try logging in. I don't have that. I don't have numlock on, so I shouldn't try and use it. Let's see if it pops back out to log in again. Okay, we go back over to our putty session. Let's see if it's successfully mounted. It could have skipped it, and we wouldn't have seen it because we don't have the console output on the display. So we're going to restart the session. We're going to go to root. We will type in the super secure password, and we'll do df-h, and let's see what we got. We do currently have it in, so it is there. So let's verify it. So let's do ls /mount /home ders home I do not see an extended greg user directory in here, and maybe that's the issue. So I set it, but it's currently not there. Let's run our this again, but let's get rid of the extended greg. Which is fine. And now let's just switch over and see if we can actually get it to log in appropriately. And then we'll try rebooting and see if it will auto log in the way that we want. So it is not. Right, so we have mnt home ders /home. We see all of the files located within here. Let's see what we got. Actually, what would be really funny? Okay. On all other Linux distributions, everything else like that, this is exactly how you do it. But generally, it doesn't give you the issues because you don't have a GUI or something else like that. So it won't restrict you from being able to change it. But sometimes it does. So since we've actually already changed it, everything else like that, let's actually, just before we reboot, let's try that. So currently it is not set to our new location, which is /home, perhaps because of the trailing slash, or because we haven't rebooted. So let's go ahead and try that. Let's just reboot and see what we get. Because we do know our mounting is working as expected. We are able to change the directory. But at this point, let's see what exactly is going on with it. Let's switch back over to our Pi. Let's see. If it comes up with an automatic login, then pretty much that will be set to go. And it didn't, which tells me it's not going to work. Let's see what we got. Okay, that exits back out. Let's go back over here. We're going to log back into PuTTY. Because again, this automatically exited when we rebooted. Do restart session. And let's do just a quick tail /var/log. And it is, do we have syslog or do we have a messages? Or do we have nothing? I see boot.log, but I'm not entirely sure that that's going to get us what we want. Let's just look. Yeah, that's only going to do services. We could do last log. Nothing. And then we could do fail log. Let's see. Has no content. No. Right, we do see home dir's mounted here successfully. Let's just check. We'll do echo. Oh, and we see it didn't change. And it may be because of that space. Because there is another option, which we can actually create the symbolic link going to that location. Let's try that. So let's do ln-s, and we'll do source destination, so /media. Oh, and actually we may need to remove that directory. So let's do rmdir first, /media, /extended greg, /Samsung USB. And let's just try adding it to that as that directory. Now let's do ln-s /media we did it as mount /homeDirs, and we're going to set that to /media extended greg Samsung /USB/. Oh, and I got that backwards. Let's do a copy and a paste. Oh, maybe I didn't get it backwards. I had a trailing slash, I think. Yep, that was it. All right, so now if we ls, we'll do -la, and we'll do /media extended greg. We do see we have the Samsung USB pointing to mount homeDirs. So now let's try logging in on the other machine and see if it actually just takes. Because this is the other option besides trying to change everything, is you just kind of swoop it in underneath. And we see that does work. I'm not necessarily excited about it. I might go in and change it later, but we're going to move on for now. So if we actually go in here, let's just verify that our location is what we expect it to be. Mount homeDirs home, and perhaps it reloaded. I am just going to check this really quick, because I think that would actually be really funny. Because it looks like it's fine. So let's just do echo. So this is tilde. That doesn't look a lot like a tilde to me. But we're going to trust it for now. Yeah, it is not a tilde, which means our keyboard layout is wrong. So let's do raspi-config first. Okay. We're going to do localization options. We're going to do keyboard. All right, right now it's set to generic, which this is not the one that we have. Technically, we would have to do 104, but what we want is, yeah, let's do 104 generic. I don't want to actually search through this whole thing. This looks terrible. Okay, so this is 104. It's going to be US. Default. No compose key. Short form is no. All right, and let's just test it really quick. It says unexpected operator, which to me says that it's not going to be particularly happy. And it doesn't look like it updated. This is very disappointing, but all right, we go from there. I'm not going to reboot just for that, but we are going to have to just do it through PuTTY really quick, just to check and make sure that it is doing what we think it's doing. So let's restart this again. Oh, we didn't actually restart it, so let's just verify. Right, it's still showing the same old thing, but I'm curious if we duplicate the session and try logging in again as ourselves. And then we do pwd. Now it still says that home directory, but that is pointing to the other location. So if we ls in here, we see all of our files as expected. But if we do df-h, we do see that it's in home ders right here. All right, so let's keep moving forward. Annoying, but it's definitely not localizing the way that it should. But that is a Raspberry Pi OS thing, because that is going through raspi-config. So I was going to install some apps, but let's pretend that we did. So we're going to do just a quick software update. So we'll do sudo apt update just to get the latest list. Okay, we're going to do sudo apt upgrade. It's going to show us all of the available upgradable packages versus the image that we just installed, which looks like it's only a few of them. We're going to go ahead and do yes. It's going to start downloading them, and we see the progress as it goes. One of them is installing Chromium browser, which we weren't able to run before. I do want to test that, because right now it does have access to its home directory. It is also possible this could be a bug, because it just downloaded this OS as we were doing it live here on stream. But I'm not ruling out the possibility that something about going the way that we did it, since we didn't start out with pkill, for example, or other methods like that, could have caused disruption associated with this. But I think it is something we'll have to see how it goes. So right now it's currently unpacking and installing all of the packages that we selected. And there's nothing more exciting than watching a machine process. So this is definitely one of the reasons why I'm a huge proponent of Alpine Linux. Not because there's bugs, because obviously I'm rustier on this than I probably would be by comparison to Alpine Linux, just because I use Alpine Linux for a lot of my embedded systems, things like that. But from a practical stance, it has a lot more installed packages, as we see. So if you wanted to do something that was purpose-built for application-specific things, you'd have to strip out a lot of things. Now, they do have the Raspberry Pi OS Lite, which also would have been another viable option to install here. And that would have been much better for... That version is much better for doing type kiosk environments, things like that, because it doesn't have a lot of extra baggage. You do have to install your own desktop environment, but at the end of the day, that's actually not that bad. It'll give you a stripped down desktop environment without any pre-installed bloatware that could drag down whatever process you're trying to do. And I noticed that it's doing Chromium browser, which may take a second, but we do see it's going from version 119 to 120, and Chromium is a port of Chrome browser but it's the open source variation of it. So opposed to it being just you know, the Google proprietary version, it is open source. You can make your own custom variations to it, and I believe also contribute to the source code. So it's doing that now, updating SSH. Firefox, so again doing looks like a version update on that. And generally I don't like to have both installed, but it does come by default, I guess, so they don't show favoritism. Because some people like it like one type, some people like the other type, so you know, who's anybody to judge? But I prefer Chromium personally. But again, they work pretty similar. But again, it does take a second to update. Alright, Genie is the editor, so it's a coding editor, but for the GUI. libcurl, GStreamer. It has a lot of default packages. And they are all gigantic. You want to say hello? Nala's going to keep us entertained here while we're watching the progress meter go across the screen. Right? Are you my entertainment here? You're so good. Let's see. EEPROM for RPi. This is done out of alphabetical order, so there's no actual way to know how far it is through the list outside of the progress that we see on the bar at the bottom. And that's one of the reasons why I do like apt over apt-get. So apt-get is the legacy implementation for package management, where apt is a lot newer and includes those types of optimizations like search and also doing the progress bar. So, do you like the progress bar? I like the progress bar. And cups is actually a printer utility. VLC is a media player. Again, all by default. So it's setting all of this up right now, opposed to actually installing it. It's just completing that installation to make sure it's ready to run. You okay? Good kitty. %. So right now it's updating the actual init RD image. So this actually lives on the memory card itself for booting. And that's pretty much the kernel. So that's when it loads the kernel pretty much. And everything sits on top of that. So it's kind of important. So when it does the update init ramfs, that's what it's doing, is it's adding all of the currently present images to that list to do potentially the selection options for recovery, etc. Just as needed. But it takes a second because it does have to process a lot in order to give you the appropriate options. There we go. Finally. Okay, so going on from here, now that we have everything already set the way that we want it, and by that I mean it's not set at all the way that we want it, but you get the idea of exactly how to go about getting there. So let's enable the overlayfs. So we don't have to reboot for any of the updates that we just made. So we're gonna actually go ahead and do it. Let's start, see if we can start the actual Chromium, or any browser for that matter. And actually, I say that, it has been showing a pop-up this entire time. I don't think it has. Okay, good. I would have felt very bad if that was the case. Alright, let's try that. So let's do sudo raspi-config, and let's just actually make sure that we're set with a default. And we may need to trigger it from the command line, because that's not necessarily great if we can do, I didn't put the I, by the way, if we can't launch a browser. So we'll do system options, browser, and we will do Chromium. Hit OK. Access denied. Perfect. Why did it say that? Oh, it's saying it cannot do it because it doesn't have permission. Let's do ls-la. It's all owned by root. Everything here should be owned by us. So let's do chmod -R. We will have to do sudo for this. chown. And we'll do extended greg. :extended greg. And then we'll do a dot. Actually, we could just do, I believe, ./*. All right, and that's fine. Let's do this again. And we actually may need to do the full path. /mount /home dirs /home. Oh, /home. Still says operation not permitted, but we are doing sudo for this. Maybe because it's in use. Well, it's possible. Will it launch now? Or will we have to log out and do it through command line over there? And I have a feeling we're gonna have to do that, so let's go back over. Not test. Home dirs / Alright, we don't want mod, we want own -R :extended greg. Let's do the same thing that we did last time around. where we do the pkill. All right, and that time it did it. So let's do ls-la / mount home dirs. It is still set to root. And that's still set to root too, so it just ignored it. So it didn't kill anything, and it just went through. It says operation not permitted for all of this. Which is not helpful. So what are our options for this? Because obviously it doesn't do anybody any good if we can't actually do it, but we did show that we could write to it. Did we show that we could write to it? That's a great question. We were able to write to it before, but perhaps that's our issue. So let's do touch. Let's just do touch test. So permission is denied, so it is an issue. So let's see. And it may be something where it might be better to actually wipe it and just let it do its own thing. But we could potentially do this on a higher level. Let's go to properties. Let's go to permissions. Right, so anybody can access it. Anybody can own it. It's saying the user and everything else. So let's just set it to anyone for now. And saying, do we want to recursively do it? Operation was completed with errors. Operation not permitted. Right, so if we click into any of these, go to properties, we still see the permissions are not being allowed to be changed. After all of this, I'm actually tempted to just blow it out and just start over and make it more cohesive. Because I think it's going to go a lot better if it's working as expected. And I think based on what we came up with from this so far, if we clean this out, we could actually do this a lot faster without having to solve like edge case issues. So let's try that. So I'll shut this down. I'm going to pull out the memory card. I'm going to try and just do this more quickly. And for everybody's sanity, I did go ahead and so I put it back in the original SD card, and I put it in a USB 3.0 port this time. So okay, so we're booted up, we're back in the original OS. We're gonna go into PyImager, and we're gonna go ahead and actually load this on again. So we're gonna go Accessories, Imager. We're going to choose the same options that we had before. So we're going to choose our device. We're going to do Raspberry Pi 5. The OS is going to be 64-bit, because we do want all of that stuff regardless. We're going to choose our mass storage device. We're going to hit Next. Let's check our settings. All right, it looks like everything is still here from the last time that we created this. And actually, I just want to see... We have services here. Let's enable SSH. Right, we'll use public key authentication. That way we don't have to do it after the fact. Okay. We'll leave all of that as is. Right, let's hit save, hit yes. Are you sure you want to continue? It's going to be erased. Yes, we do. While it's doing this, let's and actually, I believe it's downloading it right now. Or do I have to hit next? There it is. Yeah, I'm not sure why it didn't start. Alright, so it's doing its thing. Hopefully it goes significantly faster. We'll just leave this up here. We're going to go into our folder. Let's see what we can do. Alright, and this is Samsung USB is what we want to look at. That's not the file that's not the drive we're currently writing to. Right, but it's got all of these things here, and I don't like the way that that is. So we're going to do two things. We're going to rename the Samsung USB. But let's go ahead and delete this home folder. Answer is yes. And let's actually even format it to ext. And the reason that we're going to do that is because I think it's going to stop those errors from popping up. So let's do this. We'll plus into this. So let's start by ejecting this file system. Right? So we close that out. We do know that it's SDA1, but we're going to verify, so we're going to do ls/dev/sd star. Right, we see SDA1, SDB1. Oh, that's an issue. So let's do blkid. So SDB is not in play. It doesn't have any partitions. SDA appears to have two partitions. So one of them is the ext, and one is the vfat. So let's do fdisk really quick. /dev/ Actually, let's see. Can we do disk part? Or is that no, fdisk. And we'll do /dev/sda. We have to do sudo for this because we're not logged in as root. Okay, we're going to do m for help. We want to print the partition table, which I believe is p. Okay, we see this is a 30 gig, so this is not the one that we want. So we're going to do q for quit. Right, let's just check STB, no medium found. So that is interesting. Right, so P for partition table. So it is showing up as SDA. And it may be the other one is showing up as MMC BLK0. Or because we don't have it mounted, it's not showing up as anything. So let's actually just unplug that. Okay, so I just unplugged that, plugged it back in. It says it was... Right, so we see it here. We see the right thing. Let's actually do the same thing here. Okay, and now it does find a disk. So I do believe that it actually unacknowledged any of the partitions that were there. So we may need to unmount it manually without actually ejecting it. So let's do lsblk again. Or, excuse me, P. All right, and there we see 118. So this is the correct one, which is SDB. So let's do Q. We'll do lsblk. Okay, and we do see it, so we want to do umount /media / extended greg. Okay, now we'll do df-h. Okay, and it is not mounted. Next, we want to do ext4. So we're going to do makefs.ext4. Right, and this is a Linux native partition, but honestly, since we're going to be using it only on Linux, that's perfectly fine. And then we're going to put the path to our device. So we're going to do dev, because we want to keep the same partition, we just want it not to be exFAT. And we're going to do sdb1. Permission denied, we need to do sudo. It contains an exFAT file system. Do we want to proceed anyway? Yes, we do. So now what it's going to do, it's going to create those super blocks. It's now going to create the journal, and what the journal is if there's a problem or if it shuts off unexpectedly, it will be able to go back and recover it without corrupting the entire file system. So now that it's completed that, we can do lsblk. Okay, we do see there's one there. It has a partition. So now let's just try and mount it. So we're going to do mount /dev. Let's do SDB1. Then we'll do media, extended greg. And do we have anything there? Let's just mount it there. So we'll do sudo. Right, we'll do df-h. Right, we do see it's present there. Okay, and it currently has nothing in use. A few less megabytes, but that's totally fine. So now we have it pretty much formatted the way that we want, so we can just use it. It'll be a little bit easier to be able to use it that way as an ext4 file system. We could use ext5 as well. And we see this chugging along. It's on USB 3, but again, it's an SD card, so it takes a hot second. I wish it had one with details that would show you what it's actually copying, but we can only do so much. I don't know that we were bottlenecked before on the USB 2. That's kind of the trick, is what is the actual bottleneck when it's trying to write all of this? And, you know, it may just be that the actual amount of resources needed to be able to expand it is not necessarily sufficient to be able to keep up with the write speed of the actual drive. So if we look at this, it doesn't look like it's using a whole lot of memory. It's not looking like it's using a whole lot of CPU. So who knows? We'll go figure, but it's chugging along. right? Like if I expand this all the way, it's, you know, there's not a lot going on. Yeah, it refreshes every 2 seconds, but... So I'm not entirely sure what it's bottlenecking on. Let's go to more details, see what options we have here. That wasn't a lot more detail, as it were. So let's go to top. So we'll expand this out. Because we still have to verify after this, which should hopefully be faster because it is going to be reading. Right, so we see what it's currently using here. Does not look like it's using the network at all right now. Just because it's not using any time on the CPU. Which tells me that it's already downloaded, which we would expect it to be. And then from there, it's copying it to the flash drive. But the reason why it's only using 17% and still bottlenecking on USB 3.0 on a pretty fast drive may just be the result of it bottlenecking on the SD card itself. This is not a particularly... like, I'll show you. So it's one of these... Oh, that's going to key. So let's try this. If it's going to focus, then I'll take the camera, but let's try. So it's one of these drives right here. So it's the Evo Select 32 gigabyte, but it is a U1 instead of a U3. So that makes the actual rate of transport significantly slower than it would be otherwise. So my feeling is it's probably bottlenecking there. So 74%. Let's see if we can get this to just power through. We'll go through the same commands, hopefully a little more easily this time around without having to do as much research or fiddling. And then just get it to start up. So key thing is definitely not having a space in the name. Let's actually check that really quick, make sure that that is in fact the case. So let's go through. Boom, 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 boom. And let's do block ID. It is still labeled. Let's see if we can change the label. So let's do fdisk. We have to do sudo once again. Hopefully we don't have to repartition it, but I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point. And generally, actually, that's what I would usually do on Windows, is I would clean the disk, which would allow it to pretty much start from scratch, which gets rid of anything, especially from the factory, that is going to be an issue. So we can go ahead and go through that and just create an empty GPT file table, partition table. And so let's just do G. Oh, I may have it mounted now, so it may error. Let's see. Right, so it did create the label. Let's do print. Right, we don't see any partitions, so we're going to do O. Not that O, lowercase o. Which will create, no, that's DOS. So it is saying it contains a DOS signature right now, but we want to create a new partition. So N for new partition. We're going to do partition number 1. We're going to use the defaults. So first sector, 2048. Last sector will be the one that we want. We print again. We do see that it is present. That's SDB1. Okay, so we're going to write these changes out. Still using the old partition table, we can just type sync. Actually, let's just do a quick df-h, make sure it's not mounted. It is mounted, so we're going to do sudo umount /media /extended greg. Now we're going to do sync. All right, and now let's do blkid. See, it's still there. So it hasn't sunk yet. So let's go back into fdisk. Just print it out. Right, Linux. Let's write it out. And it's synced. All right, now if we do block ID, we do not see that the label has changed on the partition, and it's still showing as exfat. So let's do sudo, and we may still need to reboot for this to work. It's still verifying, so we got a second here. So let's try just ejecting it and plugging it back in, which will force. Okay. It is still there, so it's still reading the whole partition table. Just going to go through and do the same thing once again. So it did have that. Just going to try this. Okay. Then we'll do sudo makeifs dot ext4 dash help. We can set a volume label here with -L. Right, and let's call it home ders. We shouldn't need any. Oh, SDB1 helps if we tell it what drive we're doing this to. Okay, now it's doing this. Going to do lsblk, it should come up with the appropriate thing. Okay. Right, and then blk ID. Perfect. So this should be ready. So if we actually mount this, Need to be sudo. We do see it's mounted. So that is working as expected. Excellent. $88, 89% verifying. So we got the rest of it pretty much set to go. It's very close, and then we get to switch over. We could cancel the verify, but honestly, if it's gonna mess up when it boots, it's not really helping anybody anyway. Finished. Okay, so we're gonna shut down. I'm gonna swap out the SD cards. Okay, so it did turn off. It's hanging on the last frame. I'm gonna pull out the old SD card and take out the one that we just created and put that one back in. And let's see the magic that we get now. With any luck, maybe we'll even get to see some new errors. Let's see. Who knows? So. It's going to do its reboot thing 2 or 3 times again, just because it has to create everything and expand the file system. All kinds of exciting things. At some point I should do a live stream of picking out new music. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, the real key here is just building projects and technology that are useful. At least to me. Hopefully it's useful to you as well. So we do have everything booting up successfully right here. Before we go crazy, let's go ahead and do the same thing that we did before, but let's do it more elegantly. So first let's actually modify our SSH to be able to allow login for root. So we're going to do sudo apt install vim. Right, because we don't want to hate ourselves. Oh, we may need to do update first. No, it is doing it. It's doing it. Okay, it took it a second, but as long as it does things, that's all that matters. Still doing things. There it is. Okay, so now we can do sudo vi /etc/ssh/sshd config. Scroll down here. For some reason, it's a different color than it was the last time around. Okay, we're going to delete this. Change this to yes. Right. $WQ didn't take. Maybe. Oh, it did. It just took that long to write. I'm going to verify that because I don't trust that. It did do it. All right, so it's running. So let's do service sshd restart. Okay, that did do it. It asked for the prompt because I didn't do sudo beforehand, but it did restart it. Okay, so now if we log out of this, okay, we're going to go back over to our other instance, right? And it should be the same IP address because we haven't changed MAC addresses. It is a new key though, so we're going to do accept. We're going to do root. I don't know that we set a password for this. We did not. Let's go back over here and actually fix that. Because we didn't unlock the account either, I don't believe. So let's do sudo, I'll zoom in, passwd root. Okay. Let's do sudo usermod -U root. All right. Still running a little slow, but I know that it's doing things in the background, which is always the case anytime you run it. Okay, we're here. Let's go back over to the other machine. Okay. Assuming this is still valid. Okay, we try it. Now we can get in. Okay. So we're going to do pkill extended greg and usermod -d lowercase d / actually, let's do this. Let's do, before we do changing the home directory, let's mount it through fstep so it's in a permanent location. So let's do df-h, find out what we got. So we do see that it's currently mounted there. We're going to do umount /media / extended greg / home dirs. Okay. So now it is not there. So now we're going to do blkid. All right, it's currently under SDA1, but we're going to use the part UID right here. Okay, and we're going to vi /udc /stab. Now we do know that this is ext4 this time. So we're going to go over here, but we can pretty much copy what is here, which makes life a little bit easier. So we're going to do first this. That's excellent. That's not what I wanted. It's doing visual again. It's going to make me copy it manually again. Let me actually write it down, because you see it's right there. It's so close and yet so far. Actually, we may be able to use nano, since we're only doing a single line. Although nano's not installed, so it's not even doing it. Oh, it's choosing its... Oh, wait, did I do the same thing twice? Let's see. All right, so I'm going to do this. Right click. It appears. Yay. Let's get rid of the quotes because it doesn't need it. All right, and then we're going to do tab. No, just 2 spaces /mount /home ders. So that's what we had before. We'll do 3 spaces ext4. Defaults. Zero, 0. Let's go with that. Actually, we'll put one more just for... No, we're not. Ah. Okay, now it's written out. So we may need to create that directory. So we're going to do make dir /mount /home ders. Now we'll do mount -a. We'll do syscontrol. We'll just run it again. No error. df-h. And we do see that it is currently present and mounted using our command. Now we can go ahead and we can actually add in, we can change our user. So I believe we are logged out on the other machine. We'll do pkill extended greg and then we're going to do usermod -d /mount /home ders /extended greg, no space at the slash at the end, -m extended greg. Okay, now we'll do echo tilde, because this is putty and it's working. I don't know why it doesn't work locally. We'll have to change the keyboard layout or something, but echo tilde extended greg. And we see it did not update, but that's okay. It says it updated. Let's actually just try it once more without it. Just make sure it's actually running. We're going to do ps-aux or greep extended greg. It says nothing is running. Right, it's not modifying any services in this particular case, but it does. That's an interesting error. It said it cannot rename it, but it looks like it actually did do a thing. Right, so we do see that it's currently mounted, so let's actually ls into there. Let's make sure it did a thing. So it doesn't have the new directory. Maybe it wants it. Let's try it. Nope, no caps. All right, let's try this command once again. And actually, we could just move everything over. Let's make sure it's moving all files. And actually, we could CP it. So we'll do CP / home extended greg star, and we'll bring it into mount home ders extended greg, just so it exists. We need to put -r. Perfect. I did the wrong one. -r. There we go. Now it actually did it. And let's do let's do ls-la /mount home ders extended greg. Right, we see everything is currently still owned by root. So let's go ahead and change that for this directory. Actually, let's just make sure. Yeah, so everything is owned by root. So let's do chown. Right, we're still logged in as root, and it's currently not using this directory. So we're going to do extended greg / extended greg. Right, we need to do a -r before we do this as well, because we want it to recurse into all directories. And then we'll do /mount / home ders, and we'll do extended greg, but without the slash, so that way it goes into every folder within it. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. We do see that the permissions successfully changed on that. If we go into that, we do see all of the permissions on those successfully changed, which should resolve our issue with the browser not being able to open. So now if we go back to our regular installation and we log in again, okay, which is going to the new path, we're going to test and make sure we can write to it. Now again, we copied all of our files over, but we see it's in mount home ders extended greg. We should be able to create a file here. We'll call it test. Okay, it didn't come up with any errors, anything else like that. We go back over to our other machine and we ls that directory. Once again, we do see the test file is now displayed, which is perfect. And now we can delete it. And we see it can go to the wastebasket as expected because we're on the ext file system type. So there is a wastebasket present. So that's working as expected. Let's make sure we can open the browser. It does things. Wow. What a magical thing. So it's able to open the browser. We're going to hit got it. We're going to close out of this. Okay, and now we're going to enable our overlay file system. So let's plus into this. Okay, actually let's do a test reboot first. just because we can. Okay, so I did a sudo reboot. So now it's going to reboot. Okay, and then it's going to come back. It should automatically log in. We'll be able to open the browser, everything else like that. For the purposes of discussion, this is, these are the apps that I want to have installed, although I'm probably going to go back later and install quite a few others. We do see it logged in automatically. We're going to verify our home location again, which is Mount Homedur's Extended Greg. We could also verify that by going in here, typing in pwd, which will show us the same thing. So it is, in fact, writing and reading from our USB thumb drive. Next, we're going to go over to raspi-config. So we're going to do sudo raspi-config. Okay, and let's open this up. We're going to do performance options. And we're going to do overlay file system. Would you like it to be enabled? Yes. Takes a second because it has to do things, because it is actually a program that you can install, but pretty much what it's going to do is create the overlay file system so it starts on boot successfully. It's going to also try and make it so you can't bypass it incidentally. And we do see that it is updating things on the boot partition because it is changing the actual boot options to go directly into this. So certainly something to keep in mind. And of course, again, this part takes a second. It is enabled now, so we're going to hit OK. Would you like the boot partition to be write protected? So this is, do we want it to be on right now? And the answer is yes. Boot partition is read-only. Hit OK. Finish. Would you like to reboot now? Yes. Okay, so we've finished applying the overlay file system, and you see that if we just did that, the video would have been, the live stream today would have been 5 seconds. But because we wanted to actually preserve our other files and everything else like that on the USB thumb drive, that's where it took a second, because at the end of the day, it automatically logs you in as a user, and it's not necessarily easy to release that user from the running process without jumping through a bunch of hoops. So I don't like the fact that we had to force it in order to get usermod to work as expected. There may have been a GUI option to be able to do that. I'm just not familiar with it. I might find it out, or if somebody wants to put in the comments if they know of a more efficient way to do this, that's awesome. So let's actually go through here. We do see that there is an actual path to go to root RW over here. And then we have the rootfs read-only right here. And we can, of course, hide these, right? So we can make it so they do not show up, and that is an option in the settings. But let's actually go into File Explorer here, or the, I call it File Explorer, but that's a Windows thing. Right, and if we just go to Home, for example, we can create a new file, and we'll call it Test. Let's actually do it through command line. We have to do sudo for this. Right, so if we cd/home, for example, we see the extended Greg is there. We're going to do sudo touch test. So now when we ls, we'll do ls-la. We see one of them is a file, one of them is created by root because we did sudo, but it's got a file there. All right, so that was in the home directory /home/test. So let's reboot now that we have the actual overlay enabled. Okay, and we should see that file disappear as expected. So since the overlay is saving only changes to RAM and does not write back to the hard drive explicitly, we will see that it will not be there if it's doing its job. So that is the key. So we're going to go back into here. We're going to open this up. We can go to our home directory, and we see that the file is no longer there. So anything that we do create on the desktop, so we can test that as well, because the boot up is pretty fast. If we add a file here, and we call this test home. Okay, we see our file here, test home. If we now reboot again, with this mapped to the new location, I did log out. I don't know why I did that. And I may need to do a quick power button press. It's easier to do restart, but you know, whatever it takes to get the machine to restart and boot again, it will still work. But that wrote it out to the SD or to the USB thumb drive, so it will log back in. Oh, and should have still been present. Let's see. Where is this? Oh my goodness. It included the USB thumb drive. What an absolute pain. It may be better to do this from command line. I will say this, you can also do the same kind of behavior on Ubuntu and others, which will at least give you the options, because you'll have to configure them beforehand before you actually do it, but it doesn't have the way to enable and disable it as cleanly as Raspberry Pi OS. And I think that's definitely part of it. Because it should only be doing the actual root file system. It shouldn't be doing the entire thing. Let's do df-h. And if we look, we do see it has a read-only version mounted. So this is the overlay right here, and we see it's limited to the amount of RAM that's in play. So just curious, if we look at vi/etc fstab, we see it's this fstab is for overlay root f, and the real one can be found at media root ro etc fstab. So we may need to actually make this so it doesn't double mount, because we don't want it to do we don't want it to mount in that way. So we can't actually modify this in place, because obviously we're on a read-only file system. So let's go to let's do nano / mount. Now it's under media. Root RW, overlay. What do we got? And we're going to do etc fstab is what it said. Okay. because we want it as read-only for the actual... Oh, it says it's unwritable. We may need to do sudo. Let's see. It will tell us, though, if it's not writable. Okay, this was writable. So it's this entry down here. So here's where it says RO defaults. We want that to go away. And then we'll comment this out down here. Oh, wow. It still doesn't know what kind of keyboard I have. We didn't set that up. So let me set that really quick. Otherwise, this is going to be a thing. Actually, I could just try and find it. Let's see. I don't know where the position of the hash actually is on the European keyboard. So let's just save this out. And let's just do raspi-config really quick. And set our localization settings. And we should be generic 104. Actually, do we have one? What is this? What did I choose? So this is a Dell keyboard. All right, let's try this. We'll try USB multimedia. US. Okay. There's no compose key. I'm double checking. No. Okay. I didn't see any errors come up. Look at that. Oh, does it do a tilde? Oh, it does a tilde. Oh, it's working. Okay. Now, granted, once I turn off the overlay file system, I have to do that again. So that's a thing. But here's what we needed to do. We need to put that. All of that for that. So that's wonderful. Control X. Yes. Enter. Let's try rebooting. Let's see what we get. Okay. It started, so that's half the battle. So let's check this. Okay, that's good. df-h. Still did an RO. So it looks like it did overwrite it. So let's do this. Let's do sudo raspi-config. Let's go back down to performance, P2 overlay. Would we like it to be enabled? No. Okay. Finish, reboot. Let's see what we get. Where's my input? Let's see. I do see it on my screen, I just don't see it coming in. So let's try this. There it is. Okay. So now we have this. So we have our overlay disabled. So a few things I want to do. Right, because I don't have this. So let's do sudo raspi-config. Right, we're going to do localization again. Keyboard. Right, we did USB multimedia. I have the screen too small, so it's not showing all of the options. All right. So now vi/etc/fstab. Let's see what we get. And we see our original fstab has been replaced. So let's try going back in here. Let's re-enable this. Performance option, overlay. Would we like to enable it? Yes. Okay, it's would you like it to be write protected? Let's do no. And see if we can get the expected performance, because that might actually be an easy win. And this is the challenge as well, is when you start doing things that are not based on what the operating system is natively designed to do, it can do unexpected behaviors. So since we're trying to write to something that we're intentionally trying to block write access to, it starts to reach an edge case that most people don't try and approach. And if you don't have a domain or something else like that where you're storing it to a network drive that can't be write protected, you know, it turns into a bit of a thing. But I think we'll be able to do something. Let's see. So okay. So let's do the simple test. Let's just try and create two files. Yeah, so let's do it like this. And then we'll just reboot and see what it does. I'm also just going to go into fstab. Let's just look and see if this is actually doing anything here. Because it looks like it's doing read-only. Let's see. Real one can be found. Media root read only. etc fstab original entry for / and other mounts have been updated to place under media root read only. To permanently modify this or any other file, you should change root into a writable view of the underlying file system overlay chroot. Let's try following RTFM on this. See what we get. Well, overlay root -chroot. So we're going to do bi / etc fstab. Nope, didn't do it. So it didn't help. Let's do a quick search. Actually, let's do draw. Well, they got no traction. All right, so overlay file system, overlay objects. You are welcome to go through this as you wish. So what we're looking for now because this is covering other applications of overlay file systems like merging things. It's getting a lot into the weeds. It's not the way that we're applying it, relating to actually doing it through the doing it for what we're trying to use it for. So, because we're just trying to do it to make it so it discards changes, things like that, that it stores in RAMs in the interim, using the copy on write, etc. But let's see. I'm trying to find the configuration directory where it could be setting. Gives some interesting examples, things of that nature, relating to how this can be applied. My feeling is that it's actually the raspi-config that is actually generating that particular settings in order to be able to apply that. So an option would be to let it auto mount, but the problem with that is, of course, it's going to block our login because it won't be mounted by the time it starts up. I think she's getting tired of this stream, so let's see. So short form is, it doesn't seem like it's doing exactly what we want, which is very annoying. Because we do see that it's still in the RW media root read-only mount. So if we do VI, let's do /, well, we'd have to unwrite to protect it. Because that's the other issue, is it would limit us to the amount of space that we have in RAM, which is, of course, what we're trying to avoid. So I'm not sure why it parses it. So let's do find /-name. Oh, I did that, but it's probably going to need sudo. That is interesting. It has a sys module overlay. Again, we're still inside of this. Always an exciting time. Yeah, this is, we could actually install it from packages, but it's not. It makes it really difficult to update. I'll put it that way. All right, so let's do just check this. So it's completely back to normal. So let's try this. I'm gonna do insert. I'm gonna do, oh, we're changing a read-only file because I didn't do sudo. Go back over here. Let's do sudo. I'm gonna try commenting this out. Okay. Writing that out. Going back into raspi-config, performance options, overlay. Would we like it to be enabled? Yes. So now it's enabled. Would we like the boot partition write protected? We would say yes. Okay, it's now read-only. So now we're going to finish, but we do not want to reboot now. We're going to go back into VI. We're going to delete this, which may or may not work because it doesn't look like it's modified it. And we're going to do WQ and then reboot. And let's see what we get. Let's see what we got. Did that do it? I don't think it did it. So short form is, it looks like it's still mounting it through a read-only proxy because it's generating it on the fly based on what it actually needs. So we'd have to find a way to actually go through and exclude this from its detection. So that's definitely the part that kind of annoys me. So it's still doing overlay, so we have the lower directory, which is actually the original files. RW is the overlay, is pretty much where it's going to be, is just the RAM. And then we have the work directory. Right? Alright, she's had enough, she's hungry. I'm hungry. We see the way that we could do it to make it so it's not a, it's not writable or modifiable, but I don't think that's the end of this. I think we gotta revisit this and kind of bring it back to completing the actual task that we wanted. And I also want to see if we can get GitHub desktop working on it as well to make it a really good development environment. So, but that'll be for another night. There's not going to be any stream next week. I may make a video just because I have some things happening on New Year's. But if you like the video... Oh, actually, let me switch out and see if we can keep the cat from typing everywhere. But thanks for watching the video today. If you like the video, be sure, or like the stream, be sure to hit that like button and leave a comment down below. And if you know anybody who would like to see this kind of content and would enjoy this kind of thing, I would definitely appreciate if you share it with them, and hopefully they would appreciate it too. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It helps me out a lot. And then hit that notification bell. That way you know the next time we're getting extended. So until then, take care.